Alright, this is going to be a complete guide on how to build your first Supermoto in 2026. I'm going to try to keep this video as quick and as detailed as I can. I've been riding Supermotos for almost 5 years now. I built my personal Supermoto as well as I helped and been around tons of other bikes. And I personally believe a Supermoto is one of the most fun motorcycles you can have for the road. Alright guys, first you have to pick your bike. When it comes to picking your bike, you have 3 different categories. You have the pre-built factory Supermotos, you have motocross bikes, and you also have enduro bikes. When it comes to the pre-built Supermotos, a lot of these bikes are amazing straight out the door, but you do have to keep in mind that most of them are based on more of a road platform bike. A lot of them are kind of just motorcycles with dirt bike plastics and stuff on them to look like Supermotos, but they don't actually have the performance benefits of building your own Supermoto. When it comes to the pre-built bikes, you have bikes like the Husqvarna, KTM, and Gas 690 and 701. You have bikes like the Ducati Hypermotard, the DRZ 400 SM, and many more. When it comes to a bike like the KTM and Husqvarna 701 690s, those bikes are going to perform amazing, but they're going to weigh a lot more than a standard 450 or 500 Supermoto. And when it comes to a bike like the DRZ 400 SM, that bike's been around forever. It's an amazing bike, but it is heavy and all the technology on the bike is kind of outdated. So if you do end up building a DRZ 400, it's going to be a great Supermoto for you. But keep in mind, if you ever got on, say, one of your buddies' 450 or a 500 built Supermoto, you're going to notice the difference and instantly probably regret getting on the DRZ. The power to weight difference on both the bikes is just crazy. A handful of my friends have started on the DRZ 400 SM and have ended up selling it and building 450s. No hate on anybody that has a DRZ 400 SM. Like I said, I personally like them, but in my mind, your money's well spent elsewhere. Next up, we have motocross bikes. These are a great choice in my mind if you're building like a track-only bike, because depending on what country or state you live in, these bikes can be very hard to get street legal. And not only the fact of getting them street legal, but the maintenance can be pretty crazy on them. You know, if you go get a brand new YZ450 race bike, throw some sumo wheels on it and start ripping it on the road, your maintenance intervals are going to be pretty chaotic on that. But that being said, it's not a bad choice. And there is certain states and countries where you can make them street legal. And if you guys would like to make them street legal here in the United States, you can always look into options through a company called Dirt Legal. I personally haven't used them, but I've heard it works great for getting those bikes street legal. Next and not least, we have the enduro bikes. These are probably the most popular and best bikes, in my opinion, to build into a Supermoto. Mostly every manufacturer at this point makes a street legal enduro bike. You can look into options through KTM, Husqvarna, Gas, Yamaha makes their WR450, Honda makes their CRF 450RL, which is my personal bike. And Beta has some really good options as well. Pretty much if you have a manufacturer that you like, just go on their website and shop, see what street legal enduro bikes they have. The thing that's great about these bikes is, for one, they're already street legal from factory, so you don't have that headache. You can just get one of these bikes and instantly start building it, as well as the maintenance to keep them running is going to be significantly less than a motocross bike. Now keep in mind, it is still going to be higher than a standard motorcycle, but it is going to be a lot better than building up a motocross bike. Next, guys, we're going to be getting into the wheels. This is arguably probably the most important part when it comes to building your Supermoto, is putting a set of Supermoto wheels on it. So when it comes to wheels, obviously you're going to want to get yourself a set of 17-inch Supermoto wheels. That's 17 on the front and 17 on the back. When it comes to width, that's going to be something that you're going to have to kind of research on your own, depending on your bike. You know, bust out a tape measure, measure the distance between your swing arm, measure the distance between your forks, maybe look around on some forums. But once you have your specs dialed in, there's so many great wheel manufacturers out there for every budget. I personally wouldn't recommend getting any like super off-brand wheels from eBay or anything, because if you're riding these bikes on the road, your life kind of depends on these wheels. If you're looking for a great budget wheel, a brand called Kiki or KKE is a great option. It is a Chinese manufactured wheel, but you can grab a set of their wheels for roughly $700. They kind of have mixed reviews, but generally they're a pretty decent starting point if you want to build a budget Supermoto. And I personally ran these on my Supermoto for 3 years, and I can attest to them being very durable. Also, another great budget wheel would be a set of wheels from Bold Designs. They're going to be a little bit more expensive than the KKEs, but you're getting what you pay for. If you have a little bit more money to spend and you want to get into a good mid-tier wheel, I highly recommend a set of Warp 9 wheels. That's personally what I'm running on my build right now, and they're a great wheel, super high quality, and they're extremely durable. If you're really trying to build a baller bike, or you just want a super dependable wheel, there's some very good high-tier options as well from brands like Excel. I mean, Excel wheels are like top of the line when it comes to Supermoto. As well as you can look into some wheels from SM Pro. They sell some super sick colorways. Also, if you're building a track-only bike, you can look into getting a 16.5-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear wheel. The smaller wheel on the front is generally considered better when it comes to track riding, but keep in mind you do not want a 16.5-inch front wheel for riding on the road. They don't make very many tire sizes for a 16.5-inch wheel other than like racing slicks, so keep that in mind. One last note when it comes to wheels, everybody always wants those Supermoto 50/50 wheels, you know, the bi-color wheels. It's kind of a Supermoto staple. If you're looking to get a set of those, you kind of have three options. If you spend the money for a set of SM Pro wheels, you can buy them already done like that. They sell a ton of different colorways. You can do what I personally did, and that is vinyl wrap my wheels. I actually bought a vinyl wrap kit from Bold Designs. They sell a 50/50 wheel kit. Or you could also powder coat your wheels. I do not recommend painting them because when you go to change your tires, you're probably going to destroy the paint, and I actually know from experience. All right, you got your wheels. Now it's time to get some tires. When you're shopping around, sometimes wheels will come with a tire package, or maybe you just bought the wheels and you're going to have to buy some tires. So I'm going to go over sizing as well as some recommendations when it comes to tires. When it comes down to picking a tire, you have to decide what kind of riding do you plan to do. Are you going to be doing track riding, aggressive street riding, stunt riding? Are you just going to be doing hoon riding like burnouts and wheelies all day? Because then you'll just burn through tires. So you have to lock in what you're going to be doing when it comes to riding. That way you can decide how much and what kind of compound tire you want to buy. For track riding, like I said, you can look into a set of racing slicks. I personally have never ran a set, so I don't know too much when it comes to branding and recommendations for those. But I do know there's a lot of good groups when it comes to Supermoto racing, so I'm sure you could find a good recommendation on one of those. If you're going to be doing a lot of stunt riding and burnouts and just destroying tires, I mean, you can't go wrong with a GPR 300 tire. I mean, that tire's cheap, it's a good tire, and you can just burn through them. Me, personally, I like to have a good in-between tire because I do like to take corners decently fast sometimes if I'm feeling up to it. And at the same time, I do like my fair share of hoon riding. So personally at the moment, I am running a Michelin Power 6 tire. And in the past, when I wanted a stickier compound tire, I was running a Dunlop Q5S tire. If this is going to be your first motorcycle, you might not know too much about tires. So maybe just do a little bit of research and you'll be able to find something you like. But if you guys have been around bikes for a while, you already probably know what kind of tires you prefer. So I'm going to go over sizing. When it comes to sizing, you have two main sizes for the front and two main sizes for the rear, depending on what kind of fitment you want. And tire sizing does actually affect the lean angle of your bike. Now, I personally don't know much about the calculations on how to determine the lean angle you're going to get, but I do know what kind of tire sizing I like when it comes to fitment so that I don't have any issues mounting my wheels or any rubbing issues. So for the back tire on my CRF 450, I run a 150 60 17 tire. I found that the 150 tire is a great tire that gives you plenty of clearance on the swing arm and the chain without having to deal with any issues when it comes to taking it on and off or any heavy rubbing. Now you can run a 160 tire on the back. A lot of guys do that because it just looks super good. I mean, you're running a full-size sport bike tire on the back. Now, another size you can run on the back is a 160 tire. Now, it does look amazing, and a lot of guys prefer it because it kind of gives you that beefy sport bike tire look in the back. I mean, you pretty much are running a full-size sport bike tire in the rear. Now, be advised, if you do run a 160 tire, your clearances are going to be extremely tight. Most of the time, depending on the bike, you will have to shave the chain side of your tire down so that the chain doesn't rub on the tire, as well as on the swing arm side, your tire will be pretty tight. And I've even heard of guys having to deflate their tire to actually mount the wheel and tire onto the bike and then inflating it once they have it mounted. For the front of the bike, I run a 110 70 17. I found this size to actually be perfect for the front, at least for my application. It's super easy to take on and off the bike, and it doesn't rub on the fork guards or anything. Now, you can run a 120/70 in the front, and the 120 tire is a more common tire to find. But if you do run a 120, you will most likely have to trim your fork guards so that the tire doesn't rub on them. All right, you got your wheels and tires. Definitely the next thing you want to worry about is getting your brakes set up. Now, if you're converting a motocross bike or an enduro bike, your stock dirt wheels will come with that smaller sized rotor. I highly do not recommend putting that on your Supermoto wheels. You will see some guys do it sometimes, and yes, it will work. But the thing that a lot of people don't understand is on your full-size dirt bike wheel, you have a different braking geometry when it comes to using your front brake. So when you go to a smaller 17-inch front wheel, that smaller rotor isn't going to stop you as fast as it does on the bigger wheel. So in turn, that means you need a bigger front rotor. That's usually the best budget and first thing you should do when it comes to upgrading your brakes. Is I recommend getting a 320mm floating front rotor kit. They're not too expensive. Lots of brands sell them, and sometimes the wheels even come with them. I know my Warp 9 wheels came with a bigger rotor, as well as the Kiki E wheels, and you can also shop some options from MotoMaster. Warp 9 sells the kit separately, and there's many other big Supermoto rotor kits that you can buy. All right, so you got your big rotor handled. The next thing a lot of people don't usually do, some people do, some people don't, and I personally recommend this all the time, and sometimes I get hassled back about it, but is upgrading your brake lines. A lot of the factory Japanese bikes like Yamahas and Hondas, Kawasaki's will come with rubber brake lines. If you're on a KTM or a Beta, any of the Italian or Austrian bikes, they already have stainless steel brake lines. But what I'm telling you is, if you're on one of the Japanese bikes, definitely get rid of those rubber brake lines and get some nice stainless steel brake lines. It's actually crazy how much more brake feel and how more solid your brakes feel when you have stainless lines. And there's lots of manufacturers out there that you can buy these from. I personally run brake lines from MotoMaster. I've used Golfer brake lines, as well as HEL brake lines are good as well. So now if you got some brake lines, the next thing I would do, and this is kind of dependent on how you're riding, but if you're already upgrading your brake lines, I always recommend putting some really good brake fluid in the bike. I run Motul RBF 660 and Motul RBF 600. This is racing brake fluid, so you should never have to worry about abusing your brakes too much and getting brake fade. This means you can wheelie all day, you can go to track days, you can rip corners, and you should never have to worry about your brake fluid or getting brake fade. Now, if you're doing some more aggressive riding, or you just want a better look, or you got a higher budget, you can look into a big brake kit. I personally have a MotoMaster Supermoto racing kit on my bike with the big front piston and the bigger master cylinder. There's also options from Brembo, Behringer, VM Racing makes a really nice kit. These kits are all super good and will give you amazing brake feel for the front of the bike. When it comes to your back brake, there's not too much you can do when it comes to upgrading. I personally just run a nice MotoMaster disc, as well as a stainless steel brake line and upgraded brake fluid. MotoMaster does make a Supermoto rear caliper that you can put on too, but it's not really any bigger, so it would probably be pretty similar to a factory one. As well as if you guys are into stunt riding, there is many handbrake kits out there available, obviously. My personal handbrake kit is from 50 Stunt with a 80-inch HEL brake line and a Brembo 14 master cylinder, as well as Bold Design sells a few Supermoto kits now. And of course, there's many other Supermoto manufacturers that sell handbrake kits, so just do a little bit of research on that. And it is a cool thing to add onto your bike. Next, guys, we're going to be going over gearing, because this is always an important question. I see gearing questions all the time on the Facebook groups that I'm in, and this all honestly comes down to your riding style. And what I mean by your riding style is, what are you going to be doing with the bike? Are you going to be commuting to work? Are you going to be hitting the highway? Is it just a weekend warrior bike? Are you just out there to hoon and do wheelies and just hit jumps and just have fun on the bike? Because all that comes into play when it comes to picking your perfect gearing setup. Me personally, my bike's purely for fun. I take it out to do wheelies and hoon ride and jump and cruise around and just have a good time and use it like a Supermoto is made to be used. So my current gearing setup is a 13 tooth in the front and a 51 tooth in the rear, which is pretty much a standard motocross gearing setup, and it feels like a proper 450 on the road. But be advised, like a setup like that, I'm only getting a top speed of 85 to 90 miles per hour. So that does limit me when it comes to riding distance. If you ride a lot of highway, a good highway gearing setup that I have heard, I personally haven't tried it, is a 42 tooth sprocket in the back. I've also heard a 44 tooth is good, but be advised if you do go down to a smaller sprocket in the rear, it is going to take away a lot of your low end torque of the bike. And in my opinion, that's kind of the allure of a Supermoto, is that low end torque to just have fun and pop the wheel up and give you all your power. So there's a lot of good middle ground as well. You could look into like a 46 tooth. I have personally ran a 48 tooth. They're all good options. I would just do a little bit of research on your personal bike, because everybody's probably built a Supermoto out of your personal bike now. So I'm sure there's some good information out there. And don't be afraid to try setups yourself too. When I first built my Supermoto, I bought a handful of really cheap eBay sprockets. I wasn't planning to run these long term, but I wanted to try out a few different gearing setups to see what I liked. And then once I found what I liked, I bought a really nice sprocket. All right, now we're getting into suspension. This is also an important one and sometimes overlooked. You got to take into mind here, if you build a enduro bike, and particularly a enduro bike, it's not as bad on the motocross bikes, but these enduro bikes come with super, super soft suspension from the factory, right? They're made for woods riding, rocks, taking, a lot of pressure on the suspension. So when you get on the road and you go to, say, hit your front brakes and you don't mess with your suspension at all, those front forks are just going to dive like crazy. And of course, your suspension will just be super floaty on the road. So the first thing I always recommend to people is set your proper sag and adjust your clickers, just to see if you like the feel of the factory suspension. Now, if you're doing any track riding, adjusting your clickers on your stock suspension just isn't going to be enough. You're going to have to build your suspension for sure. But if you're just doing casual road riding, sometimes, depending on your weight and your height, adjusting the clickers can kind of get you dialed down where you want it. Now, here's the thing, and I understand it. Not a lot of people know that much about suspension, and they don't know how to properly set up the clickers how they like them. And I'm one of those guys. If you gave me a bike, I would never be able to adjust the clickers. But here's a hack for you. A lot of people don't know this. Go on ChatGPT, type in your height, your weight, your exact bike model, and tell it to give you a clicker setup for the front forks as well as the rear shock for a Supermoto road setup, and it'll actually give you a pretty dialed setup. Now, if you try that and that just isn't enough for you, you could reach out to a local suspension shop or hit a company up online. There's so many motocross and enduro bike suspension places out there. Send your suspension to them or take them locally and tell them to build you a Supermoto setup. And if you're looking for a really crazy setup while you're getting your suspension built, some places will even offer DLC coating on the lower fork and Kashima coating, and that just looks super sexy on a fully built Supermoto if it's in your budget. My personal setup is a Supermoto setup built by a local shop here. And hopefully in the future, if I have the budget for it, I'll go ahead and get the Kashima coating done, just because that really ties a build together. All right, at this point, you have a pretty nice dialed road Supermoto. You can pretty much do everything with this, but there's a lot more that you can do, so let's get into that. Next thing I always recommend, if you get all the basics done, is putting some crash protection on your bike. That includes some good crash pegs, bar end sliders, foot peg sliders. I really recommend a company called BAC3D. Now, I am sponsored by them, and I'm not just saying this because I'm sponsored by them, but they are personally my favorite, and in my opinion, kind of the best when it comes to getting crash protection. But there is a lot of other brands out there. You can look into 50 Stunt, which make really good crash pegs and bar end sliders. Warp 9 makes a set. Bold Design sells a set. And then me personally, I'm running a set of Warp 9 foot pegs with their foot peg sliders. Now, the foot peg sliders are usually overlooked, but they shouldn't be. And here's two reasons why. Dragging your foot pegs and protecting your shifter and rear brake. If you're riding these bikes hard, it's really not uncommon to drag your foot pegs. And if you're taking a corner pretty fast and a metal foot peg digs into the concrete, I'm sure you can kind of guess what's going to happen. So a good Delrin or plastic foot peg slider will help that foot peg glide across the concrete instead of dig in. And then obviously, if you ever wreck the bike, your foot pegs are meant to fold up. And a lot of the times when they do fold up, your shifter and your rear brake get destroyed, bent, or broken. So when you have a little extra gap there from the foot peg sliders, it'll actually help protect your shifter and foot brake from bending or breaking. And I know this from experience because I have indeed looped my bike, and my shifter was completely fine, but the foot peg slider was like almost wore the whole way down. Next, guys, performance. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Don't be afraid to go ahead and throw that full exhaust system on there, that titanium FMF or that Yoshimura pipe. Toss in a nice air filter. Personally got a Vortex ECU, but there's tons of ECUs out there. Throw an ECU on there, guys. Get some extra power out of your bike because it is definitely worth it. Another thing to keep in mind here is if you are on a street legal enduro bike, almost 99% of the time they are going to come choked up from factory with a bunch of emission stuff. Now, depending on your state or your country, I'm not going to tell you to do something illegal on here, but they do sell emissions delete kits. I personally have one on my bike. The state that I live in doesn't require emissions on motorcycles, so I got rid of all the emission stuff, and that really opened the bike up and gave it a ton of power as well. Next is lighting. Of course, these street legal bikes, they come with a bunch of crazy big extended tail sections and huge tail lights and everything like that. On some bikes it looks okay. On a Supermoto, in my opinion, it doesn't. You know, a Supermoto is supposed to have that nice sharp rear fender, the super sick dirt bike styling, and when you throw all that junk on there, it just does not look good, and I'm sure a lot of you guys agree. So when it comes to lighting, if you're on a KTM, Gas Husqvarna, there is tons of super sick headlights out there. Of course, you got these RGB Loki eye headlights. These things are sick. If I was on a KTM, I would definitely have them. And there's different options out there available for the Japanese bikes as well. Personally, on my bike, I threw a front number plate on and a nice 6-inch light bar with a high and low beam. When it comes to all my other lights, I personally like Street OHV. They make a lot of nice low-profile, clean Supermoto lights. But there is a lot of other companies out there that sell nice fender eliminator kits and low-pro tail lights and integrated lights. So just go ahead and do your research. Don't be afraid to try to wire up any lights on these bikes, guys. It is super easy. It's just usually connecting wires together, nothing crazy. But when it comes to lights, go ahead and get creative. I personally 3D printed a rear taillight bracket for my bike and used a Street OHV mini taillight. From some angles, it doesn't even look like my bike has any lights on it at all, which I like. Another cool thing you can get, I'm sure you maybe have seen it on Instagram if you're into Supermotos right now, is the Cyclo kit. Movetronic sells this, and there might be some other people out there, but as far as I know, they're the only people selling it right now. I have it on my bike, and it is sick. Next up, guys, of course, I gotta recommend plastics and graphics. It's kind of a Supermoto thing, man. I personally love the OEM look, and I ran it on my bike forever. But if you're looking for some top quality Supermoto graphics, there's companies like Bold Designs, Scrub Designs. My graphics are from a company called MX Graphics. They're chrome print with glitter. It's kind of a Supermoto thing if you're going to be riding on the road, and especially on Instagram and everything, just to have a wild graphics kit. And to me, personally, it really ties a Supermoto build together. Next up, if you want to put a little fanciness on your bike, you can go ahead and get some carbon fiber. My recommendation is CMT Composites. They're over in Italy, but if you're here in the US, the shipping is very fast. I mean, they sell almost every part for your bike in carbon fiber. And if you're building a super drippy street Supermoto, throwing some carbon on there, you can't go wrong, man. I personally have the carbon swing arm, rear mud flap, tank cover, exhaust cover, front fender, fork guards. I love my carbon fiber, and CMT Composite never let me down. But of course, if you shop around, especially on Instagram, there's always new Supermoto specific carbon fiber companies popping up with all kinds of cool forged designs and all kinds of craziness going on over there. Now, if you're getting down and dirty, maybe you're doing a ground up rebuild, this is pretty self-explanatory, but you can powder coat stuff. I feel like everybody that rebuilds a dirt bike from the frame up does this, but don't be afraid to go ahead and powder coat some stuff. I personally had my frame, my swing arm, all kinds of parts of my bike powder coated, and it really just like ties the build together. Finally, the last thing on the list, I'm going to be going over bolts. You may be thinking, what am I talking about? But if you put all this super fancy stuff on your bike, why wouldn't you invest some money in getting some nice fancy bolts? I personally recommend Racetech Titanium. I've been buying titanium bolts through them for a while now. I have tons of titanium bolts on my bike. It's the little details that count, and putting these titanium bolts on just looks super sick. And for my plastics, I personally hated having those bright silver bolts the whole way down my plastics around my graphics kit. So I got a super nice set of CNC red bolts for all my plastics. All right, guys, I hope I covered how to build a Supermoto in detail enough for you, and it helped you make some decisions and decide if this is something for you, or helped answer some questions for you. And as always, guys, if you have any questions, I'm going to try to answer every single question down in the comments that I can. And if I don't get to your question, guys, DM me on Instagram, DM me on TikTok. I try to read all my messages, and I'm always here to help with builds. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys end up building your Supermoto so you can get out there on the street, because you won't regret it. These bikes are sick. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and subscribe if you're new.